Hello and welcome to Good Morning America Health. I'm Rob Simmelcare. It is known by doctors and surgeons as the July effect, a theory that more patients die of medical mistakes in July due to inexperienced and overworked new doctors. Now, a new study is actually lending support to the idea behind the July effect. And joining us via remote from Baltimore to talk about this study is Dr. Karen Boyle of the Greater Baltimore Medical Center. Dr. Karen, thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.
So this July effect, this is something that I have heard of. My wife's a doctor. I know you have heard of it. What is the basic theory here? Why is this happening in July?
So July marks the beginning of the academic year for doctors, meaning that new doctors graduate medical school in June and they enter teaching hospitals in July as new interns or new residents. So they have not had any hands-on clinical experience and are getting that starting in July. So that's why July is the time that we all sort of get anxious and concerned because there are all these inexperienced doctors out on the floors taking care of patients.
Now, this has been something that has been a theory for quite a while, but now there's actually a study to back this up. Talk about the study, how long it was conducted, and what it shows.
So this study really documents what we all have known for a long time and witnessed throughout our training and practices. It went across about a 30-year time span, so a long time span, and looked at hospitals in different counties throughout the United States, specifically looking at teaching hospitals and the incidence of death in these hospitals over time, and looked at it month to month. And what they found was a large peak at July, specifically related to medicine error-related deaths. So only medicine-related deaths in July at teaching hospitals.
Okay, so that's sort of narrow. I mean, what does that tell us exactly? Is this telling us that hospitals are essentially sort of a more dangerous place to be as a patient in the month of July? Is that a reasonable takeaway from this?
Yeah, I mean, not to scare people, but you know, July is not a time that you really want to schedule an elective procedure or end up in a hospital if you can avoid it, because there are a lot of new doctors out in July. And it makes sense. I mean, what this study does is really tell us what we already know, that new doctors, are not familiar with writing medications and orders, and they're learning. And so they don't have a lot of supervision in the writing of these orders. So it's not surprising that medicine-related deaths and errors is higher at this time, whereas things like surgical-related deaths and clinical judgment may not, because these doctors are being closely supervised. It does make sense and validates what we already know.
I'm curious, in your training, your experience, have you experienced this personally? Have you seen anything or heard about anything firsthand that sort of confirms this theory about July?
Fortunately, I haven't witnessed any death related to a medical error from July and all of this. I'm fortunate for that. But, it wasn't that long ago that we all were there as rookie doctors out on the floors, working every other night, and sometimes working about 120 plus hours a week, not sleeping and not really knowing as much as the more senior physicians do. You're new. So, all doctors and people in the medical community can relate to this July event, that these doctors are really sort of, getting their experience going and they're getting used to the schedule. So it's not something that any of us are really unfamiliar with.
Now, I think an obvious follow-up question to this study is, how do you change this? I mean, you don't want a system where 1 month of the year is not such a great month to go to the hospital. So
Right.
What do you think should be done to improve the situation in the month of July?
Well, I mean, the first thing is to notice that the study took place across 30 years. And in the last 5 to 6 years, there have been huge changes made in terms of resident education. So it would be interesting to actually take a subset of that time since these changes have been made and see if medical-related errors and deaths have gone down. No residents are working 120, 130 hours a week anymore. There have been regulations saying that only 80 hours or less are allowed. And the supervision and the assistance that is given to new interns and residents in July is real. So I think we just all need to be conscious of it and really be proactive in our supervision of these new doctors in July.
All right, Dr. Karen Boyle, really interesting information. A good month to stay out of the hospital. Dr. Boyle, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it. And you can follow ABC News Now on Facebook and Twitter every month of the year. Just search ABC News Now.